All right. I think we're a few minutes past the hour, so I think we should begin. Welcome everyone to our event this evening. We have a fantastic discussion lined up for you with Shoshana Stewart, CEO of Turquoise Mountain, and Katherine Parr, founder and CEO of Katherine Parr Jewelry. Before I hand over to them to begin, just a few housekeeping notes. I just want to remind you that there will be an opportunity for Q&A towards the end of the panel discussion. If you would like to submit a question for the Q&A, if you just go to the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, you can type your questions in there and we will do our best to get around to them. The other note is just to say that this webinar is being recorded, so it will be shared with you in the coming days. So if there's anything you miss at all, you will have the opportunity to listen back when we send that out. So with that, I will pass over to Shoshana to begin.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Hello, Jenny. Hello, Kate. I'm going to rename myself here so you can actually see my name. So I'm Shoshana, and I'm the CEO of Turquoise Mountain, as Jenny said. It's something I've been doing for about 15 years. I lived in Afghanistan for the first 5 of that, and we now work across a number of countries. And I wanted to let Kate introduce herself, and then we'll try to transport ourselves to Kabul and have a look at the collaboration that we do together, and then ask some questions, and then get some questions from you all. So Kate, will you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, hi, everybody. Thank you all for being with us tonight. We're really excited for this conversation. I'm Katherine Parr. My friends like Shoshana and Jenny called me Kate. I am a jewelry designer. I am the CEO and founder of Katherine Parr Jewelry. It's a jewelry line inspired by global culture and travel. And I am based in the US, but travel often when it's not a pandemic. I am really excited to have this conversation tonight. We have worked together since 2016 is when I began with Turquoise Mountain, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that this evening. Thank you.
Hurrah. And I met Kate, as she said, now, gosh, almost 5 years ago. And she was one of the first American jewelry designers that we worked with. So I want to give you a little bit of a background about what it is that we do in Afghanistan and what Kate and I work together on. So let me share my screen here. There we are. So we're going to look at jewelry, but we're going to look at where this is made and who are the people who make it. Kate is the designer of that beautiful piece there, and actually a piece of jewelry that I'm wearing. So where does this stuff come from, and where do those gemstones come from? The story of Turquoise Mountain is about beauty, and it's about initially the beauty that comes out of Afghanistan, but now out of a number of countries in which we work. So we were created about 15 years ago to try to preserve the Afghan craft industry and the old city of Kabul, which at that point, 30 years into a long-standing set of conflicts, was on the verge of disappearing. So we based ourselves here in the old city of Kabul, which is where this jewelry that Kate designs is made, in a neighborhood called Murad Hani. And this was a place of incredible historic buildings, but when we began, it was 6 feet deep in garbage. So we just started clearing it. This is before, during, and after. Started restoring the building. So this is before and after. And again, before and after. And we've restored 150 of these buildings, put in water supply, sanitation, and electricity, and trained about 4,000 builders on these sites, masons, electricians. There's the team. This is a community that we've worked with day in and day out for 15 years, and nobody was going to school, nobody was going to a doctor when we began. So we set up a primary school, and we set up a clinic, and the clinic's now served about 135,000 patients, most of whom are women and girls. It's a maternal child health clinic. These are the twins, and these are actually 2 girls who Kate has sponsored in addition to designing jewelry. She's also supported these 2 girls through school. And I remember them when they were very, very small, when they were 3 before they got into the primary school. It's a community that we've really grown up with. So the other side of things, which is very relevant to our conversation today, is about traditional craft. So incredible traditions from Afghanistan. But if we take the case of woodwork here, and this man, Abdul Hadi, Hadi was the great lattice woodworker of Afghanistan. He made this incredible jointed woodwork, and he worked for the king. I mean, he was a famous man, but when we met him, he was 75 and he was selling bananas in the bazaar, and he had been for 15 years. When you have no students, you have no market, you stop and you don't pass it down. So we brought Hadi out of retirement and a number of retired craftmasters out of retirement. We built this institute, which trained across jewelry and gem cutting, ceramics, calligraphy and miniature painting, and woodwork. We realized very, very quickly that if we wanted to preserve these traditions and to try to make people's lives better through them, that the training was great, but if they couldn't sell what they made, it didn't matter. It wasn't going to work. And so enter Kate and a number of other, a handful of very close collaborators who have in many ways been very, very patient with us, but also have believed in this and saw something. So, we'll talk about that more with Kate, why you chose to work in Afghanistan with these artisans and with us. But this is an example of a suite that we created for the Connaught Hotel in London. But in jewelry, this has been an incredibly important element, which is partnering with designers who know their market, know their clients, but who are willing to work with Afghan motifs and with Afghan artisans. So what I'd love to do is sort of turn it over to Kate, and I'm going to ask her some questions, but it's hopefully a good way to get a sense of why she does what she does and what it's looking like in the future. So hooray, Kate. So can we start with, I mean, if anything to start off with, but I also want to ask what your inspiration is as a designer.
Well, as a designer, I'm inspired by ancient cultures and also global travel. So I've been very fortunate to travel a lot through the years. And I see when a lot of us are traveling, we see something in a temple, for example. You can see up there in Asia, Egyptian motifs that I found from a bracelet my mother gave me when I was a little girl, that Egyptian scarab, that bracelet that everyone had in the 70s. Well, a lot of these symbols and a lot of the gemstones and materials come from certain places, including Afghanistan. So I love the symbolic motifs found in the artwork in museums and temples, and then form them into personal talismans that alongside meaningful and spiritual gemstones, because the semi-precious gemstones really are meaningful. I'm always discovering something new about culture, and I dive deep into the history of the land where I work. I've worked from Afghanistan, as you're hearing about, to Jordan. It's a new collaboration with Turquoise Mountain, and Jaipur in South Africa. I've done collections on Egypt, the Persian Empire, and for my collection with Turquoise Mountain, Jordan, I use the eagle motif, which is important in Jordanian and Syrian history.
Amazing. And will you tell us a little bit more about the new collection?
Yes, I just launched very recently a new collection by the treasures that is inspired by the treasures that drew travelers, merchants, and traders along the ancient Silk Road that linked China to Europe via the Middle East. So the Silk Road, as many of you know, and some of you might not, it went through the northern Afghanistan, and its natural resources from that region, including metals and minerals, and they were exported far and wide. So for example, a lot of the lapis lazuli in ancient Egyptian tombs actually is believed to come from the mines of Afghanistan, which were in operation before thousands of years before Christ. So this particular collection, you see gemstones here, and the next slide we'll see the beautiful natural minerals and gemstones that are found in Afghanistan. So I mobilized as many as I could, creating a bit of a rainbow of colors. And the design aesthetic is minimalist. You can see they're polished stones, and it really enables the gemstones themselves to shine, because as you can see, they're quite beautiful, and amongst themselves, they don't need a lot of adornment. There's lemon yellow citrine, moss green peridot, cobalt blue lapis lazuli, and midnight black tourmaline. I use the Persian sun motif, and that pink stone right there, it's actually morganite, which is a little bit unusual. And it was named for financier J.P. Morgan in the early 1900s, which is kind of a neat fact that I've discovered in my research.
I did not know that. I love this line that you've done because it looks like candy. And yes. I feel like that. So in the bazaars in Kabul, you can, particularly if we're talking about the more prevalent semi-precious gems that are lower value, you can just sit there, there's a pile of these incredible rocks and of varying perfection, which is, I think, one of the wonderful things about, I mean, just to go back to the slide for a second, I think that rainbow could only come from Afghanistan. Literally, basically every gem except diamonds and sapphires. Emeralds, rubies, chrysocolla, lapis lazuli, tourmaline, morganite, which, and I did not know that fact, all of this stuff. So it is an extraordinary wealth of gems, but in order to really keep that value with Afghans, this is about creating finished products in Afghanistan and not just exporting. So I get so excited when you use the whole rainbow. And I just think it's so, you just want to touch. I remember the first time I saw it was in your living room, actually. I just wanted to pick up these charms. I think they're going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, next question for you, Kate, is, why do you work with a partner like us, as opposed to a lot of other partners that, work in the world of sustainability? Why work with us, and why do this in Afghanistan?
Well, that's a great question, Shoshana, and I'm happy to answer. I think the meaningful journey for me began with the beautiful gift from Afghanistan of a polished lapis lazuli bowl that a friend brought to me from Afghanistan from USAID 5 years ago, or maybe it was 6 years ago. I was struck by its beauty and that it came from an area that I thought was a little bit rougher than what the bowl showed. So it was really about the finished product, and it was just stunning and meaningful. And I heard about the work they were doing. So I was struck by the beauty and dove into learning about the gemstone and mineral industry there. But I knew, due to security concerns, that I needed a strong strategic partner in order to work in the region. So I did a great deal of research and discovered Turquoise Mountain. It was the organization that was working in the region for sustainability and in the world, in fact, that was most aligned to my values and interests of preserving heritage, culture, and people. So a man named Rory Stewart had established Turquoise Mountain in Afghanistan, as many of you know, in 2006, at the request of His Royal Highness Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales. And they had a terrific reputation and a proven track record of dynamic work. In just 10 years, they had really transformed the whole area. So I thought that was a neat organization to be involved in. And this organization now, as I see in 5 years, it's really about the people. It's well run by dedicated people, from our country head, our artisans in Afghanistan and Jordan, the artisans, the trainers, the teachers, from all across the level of seniority is really impressive. So it continuously impresses me, and I love to work with them and look forward to that in the future.
Well, you are wonderful. I think it does make an enormous difference to find ways to bring these things to market. I mean, it's the center of all this, but it does require some patience, and I'm very grateful for it. So thank you. Working with artisans in particular, I mean, you could make not handmade jewelry, right? Why work with artisans? Why go through the pain?
It's a challenge and a blessing in at the same time, actually, Shoshana. Many larger and smaller brands, prestigious brands or not, use mass manufacturing. They use machine cutting for gemstones, and there are actually human rights abuses and labor abuses throughout the supply chain. I'm not going to mention names, but you'd be surprised. And I just really love to know that something is handmade, working with artisans through, for example, a partner like Turquoise Mountain or others that I have. I appreciate the human touch. There's a beauty in the handmade. With artisan made jewelry and products, you can literally feel the human touch. I remember with one of my first pieces, Shoshana and I talked about this 5 years ago, how we could almost feel the artisan's humanity by touching an earring and the stone and the meaning. So for that reason, it's more meaningful, and I just want to do business the right way. And that's why we work with artisans.
Wonderful. And so when you think about these artisans and you think about designing and making, which faces pop into your mind? Who are the characters?
There are plenty of characters. It's a full cast of fascinating people. This picture right here is a woman named Saida. She's an artisan, a jewelry artisan from Peshawar, Pakistan. She's fascinating. She's really dynamic, actually. The way she speaks, she's deaf. She lost her hearing as a child, and she speaks in sign language. But the way she can relay meaning and symbolism of the beauty of art and humanity is beyond what most people that don't have that challenge. So I'm really honored to know her and impressed, and we're still in touch. And Mariam runs a jewelry center in Kabul. And they came to visit me in New York at the beginning of our partnership. I began in 2016, 2017. They just happened to be receiving a little award from the United Nations for sustainability, which was a really big deal. And I was so honored that they actually fit me in on their visit and came to my home and met me with the country head, Nathan, as well. And they've all become great friends. So I was just so touched, and it was because of sort of shared values and purpose that we're still friends this day. We all have the same end goal, where it's like a puzzle, getting these products from these nations to market and have it in a product of the quality that customers, like many of you, would appreciate and require. It's a process, but I really appreciate that we are able to work together, and it's gone so smoothly, not without challenges, but it's just very professional, and I love that.
Well, hopefully long may it last. Hopefully part of that is why it has lasted. So just love to look into the future. What are your plans for Kate Parr going forward?
Well, I think most certainly I'll continue to design and work with artisans in a sustainable way. I think diving deeper into the creative process and learning about the history and the cultures of the area. I hope to visit Turquoise Mountain in Jordan next year to see the progress in this aspect of the organization and connect with my friends there. I just began selling at the Morgan Library and Museum in New York. So I'm really excited about that, because that's another place where, another gem, so to speak, where our interests are aligned in the values. And we'll be expanding my brand into select retailers in the coming year. So there'll be more jewelry for everyone.
Amazing, amazing. And I love this picture because it's just this row of lapis beads. It is the most extraordinary, vibrant stone. And it comes actually in a ton of different shades, certainly, but also with veins of, mica and sometimes marble. It's such a wonderful stone.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you
for your interest in the everything we're talking about. And I'd love to give you a chance to share with people and share with me some things that I'm curious about with your work and what the future looks like for Turquoise Mountain.
Absolutely.
So Afghanistan is unusual, thinking from the West as far as a place to work. And how does Turquoise Mountain choose its countries? Is there a certain MO or philosophy that you have?
Yeah, it's a good question. We were created for Afghanistan, as I sort of said, but then after about 8 years, which is quite a long time, we were there only for a long time. We looked at a project in Myanmar, in Burma, and it was a big deal to leave Afghanistan because, I had lived there for 5 years. I had learned decently to speak some Farsi, and almost all of our staff are Afghan. So we were an Afghan organization, so why would we do it somewhere else? So we saw in Myanmar at that moment a country really opening up, and we started working with jewelers, most of whom are from Rakhine, but also weavers. There are hundreds of thousands of weavers across Myanmar, and the old capital Yangon had these crumbling historic buildings. So we decided we would do it. Fast forward. In the end, the new countries we choose, and they are not many, because I intend to establish a longer term relationship with the place when I do that. It's about heritage under threat. And that can be for a lot of reasons, but we are a heritage organization. But for us, it's just the most meaningful way to make people's lives better. And so we look for places where heritage is under threat. And that typically means that the artisans who hold that heritage are themselves under, having a very difficult time. So, if we look at Myanmar at the moment, obviously, it's a place that it has just had a coup, and it is increasingly violent and difficult. And so the weavers with whom we work, who are from and in, though they are moving, Rakhine, Chin, Kachin, Shan, Yangon, and we will continue. And this is sort of what we were made to do, is to work with artisans who are in many cases moving. Yeah, I mean, Abu Abdu is Syrian, and we work with him in Jordan. He was obviously displaced because of that incredible conflict. He's from Damascus himself. And this is a group of kids who are Syrian in Azraq and Zatari refugee camps. And again, it's about heritage programs for kids, but again, it's about this Syrian heritage under threat, but trying to engage communities through that heritage.
Wow, I love the programs you're doing with the Syrian refugees to preserve their heritage. I think that's really important and meaningful with education. How has COVID and the current security situation in Kabul affected Turquoise Mountain? I think that's a question a lot of people might be curious about.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. So I feel two ways about it. So I can just give you a description of what it looks like, but COVID, well over half of Afghanistan, though it's very difficult to tell, had COVID in the earlier parts of it because it was next to Iran and it came in very, very early. But it's, the testing and the rates are very, very low. And now the vaccination rates are very, very low. But it's now having what's basically a third wave, and people are being reinfected. And so the spot test that they did last week was 37% have it right now. And these are a lot of people who've had it before. So COVID is raging through Afghanistan in a way that it is only in some other places. Obviously, India is having an extraordinarily difficult time. So that's been very, very real and difficult. And security, it's been increasingly difficult over the last 15 years that I've been there. But the other side of the story is that we have never sold more Afghan crafts than we have over the last year. We've basically created jobs for 7,000 women through carpet weaving in this case, and hundreds and thousands more in jewelry, woodwork, and calligraphy and ceramics. I think what it says to me is that there is something about working in the handmade, which seems to be quite resilient, actually. And I don't mean to be sort of fluffy about that. I think there are some very specific reasons why that's happening. So if we look at Afghanistan, those artisans really kept, those weavers in particular, kept working through the Taliban, kept working through the Civil War, and they are managing to do it. It's very flexible. And this is true of jewelers as well, right? You can do it from your home, you can do it from your workshop, you move your machines, you make it work. So they've been able to do that. We've been able to move around quite a lot. We've been able to be flexible on shipping and timings and logistics and all the boring stuff that makes that work. So that's been resilient and it's worked. But on the other side, which certainly relates to, I hope, what you're seeing, the world cares increasingly about buying something that is meaningful for them, something where they can see who made it and they feel good about who made it. They can trace the supply chain back. That has accelerated during COVID. That trend has increased. The middle of the market, it seems, is sort of collapsing. People are always going to buy cheap, but then other things are trending and accelerating the trend toward the higher end, ethical, sustainable products. And that means people are buying what we make, and it's true across all of our countries. So that has been amazing. So long as we can keep making it, people are buying it, and it happened under duress. So yeah, COVID and security in Afghanistan has been very hard, but Afghans have been through a lot in the last many decades, and COVID is just a little bit of icing on the cake at the moment, it feels like, and they've made it work. And it's, as I said, been, I think, the best year we've ever had in terms of making this work for the artisans with whom we work.
Wow. Now, do you have any new projects in Afghanistan? I know things are always changing, and I'm excited to hear about what it will look like in the next couple of years?
Yeah. So, new businesses, new people graduating from the Institute. Very exciting up in Bamiyan, which is a region of the Central Highlands of Afghanistan. We're going to restore this caravanserai. It's one of 149 of them, very much part of the Silk Road that you talked about across Afghanistan. So we're going to restore this over the next few years. And we have actually a weaving center across the road from it. And we have a primary school attached to that weaving center. And we're going to make it live, as we like to do with historic buildings, as a carpet washing and finishing center. So if any of you want to go on a visit to Afghanistan, which I realize is not a great idea at the moment, but Bamiyan really will be the last and the first place that people can go for tourism. It's actually relatively secure. And someday you're all going to come and stay in this caravanserai.
Oh, I look forward to that. And you're all welcome, everybody.
Definitely.
Now you're working in Jordan. I just did a collection with you in the past couple of years and past year. And how is that program developing there? Because that's new.
Yes, this has been very exciting. It's been going for a few years, and as we started with Heritage Under Threat, this began with an idea that we wanted to try to preserve Syrian heritage in the wake of that conflict ongoing. But actually, Jordan has been much more than that. We are working with Jordanians, Syrians, Palestinians, and a lot of the masters, particularly in woodwork, are Syrian, but not all of them. A lot of the jewelry masters and metal are Palestinian and Jordanian. So you've got Maher on the lower left, who is a Syrian woodworker. Mohammed, his apprentice, is Jordanian. Marianne on the upper left is Jordanian. So that has been great on the artisan side. And then we are also going to take over a very large site at the very northern tip of Jordan, which I'm very excited about, called Kais.
Oh, that's so neat. Now, the refugee community in Jordan, I know Jordan houses one of the, I don't want to throw out numbers, but a large amount of the Syrian refugees, and they've been very welcoming. How are you working with them? Because that's a challenge, and it's also something that interests me very much.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about what the Jordanian government does for everyone who comes within its borders. It's pretty extraordinary. There are 1.2-ish million Syrians there, a generation of Palestinians. They're pretty extraordinary. So we are working with everybody. With Syrian refugees in particular, the first step was about finding the Syrian masters. So that is about how you ever find artisan masters, which is you wander around the bazaar, buy stuff, try to find people, ask other people where they are, and eventually find your way to people. So we met Maher, we met Abu Abdu, we met Osama, we met Abu Nidal, and all of these guys were incredible woodworkers, actually, in that case, in the beginning. So that is how we worked with them. And that was about, so in the case of Abu Abdu, it's about, he was running a big business in Damascus. What he needs a workforce, right? Because they're all gone. He needs machines and he needs people buying things from him. So we start buying things from him, get increasingly large commissions for him. We fund apprentices for a few months until he can take them on. And then he rebuilds his business in that way. So that's the sort of artisan side of how we've been working with Syrians there. And then in refugee camps, Azraq and Zatri, only 20% of Syrians in Jordan are in camps. The other 80% are in host communities, tented settlements, informal settlements. And so in those camps, we began with these children's heritage classes that I mentioned, which is about a connection to home. I mean, a lot of kids were born in those camps or don't really remember home. And I think a lot of the parents expressed, because we asked, what could we do? And a lot of them expressed incredible gratitude, I think very genuine gratitude about what they were being given in terms of education, roof over their heads, food. But it was sad that they weren't connected to home, that their kids weren't growing up with that. So we developed this simply in response to that, which is that, kids spend an hour a day learning about, the traditional Arabic house, mosaics, embroidery patterns, poetry, food. It's about asking your grandparents and your parents. It's just about a little bit of joy every day. So we then do that with communities outside of camps as well, Syrian, but also Jordanian, Palestinian, and are now doing that with UNICEF because it turns out it's actually quite a good way to get kids back into the classroom in a more formalized way. So that's how we've been working with refugees in Jordan.
Amazing, Shoshana. Thank you. It's really touching. Now, on the Jordanian front, I understand you are moving to Jordan next year, and what will your focus be there? I'm hoping to visit, of course. So,
yes, you are.
What will be your focus while you're there?
Yeah, super excited. Rory and I are moving with our 2 kids to Jordan, and we want to be closer to Turquoise Mountain again. Jordan is a project that is expanding very rapidly, and a lot of it is just how skilled these artisans are and how well that's working in terms of bringing those products to market. But it's also about this incredible site. So for any of you in the audience who have been to Jordan, it's at the very northern tip where Jordan pushes into Syria. You can see on that little map there, and you stand there, you look out, and it's the most extraordinary view. That's the Golan Heights, the Sea of Galilee. To your right is Syria. Straight over the Sea of Galilee is Lebanon. You've got Israel. You've got the West Bank and Palestinian territories to your left. I mean, you are at the crossroads of everything, it feels like. And in fact, the name Mkais means junction in a local dialect. So it's an extraordinary, it is a powerful place. And then you turn around and it's just a Roman ruin everywhere. And you sort of think, did no one notice this was here? I mean, if it was anywhere else, it would be the central tourism destination. So there are these extraordinary Roman ruins, but also, Byzantine period mosaics, half exposed. There's an Ottoman period village up on the hilltop, which was, of course, built out of the Roman stones. I mean, this whole thing has incredible layers of history. There are the market shops, very picturesque, but totally invasive yellow flowers and cacti, which need to be removed because they're ruining those buildings. So there's one of those mosaics. So yeah, we're going to throw ourselves into doing what we did in Afghanistan. And by that, I mean, looking at the site as a whole and doing everything from the restoration of those Ottoman buildings to the preservation and presentation of the Roman ruins, but also there's a community which is at about 74% unemployment next door, and really making sure that we can bring value to that community, training people, getting products to market, and running stuff for kids, which is obviously what I really love to do. So that's what we're up to next year.
Oh, that's so amazing. It's really exciting. And I'm so proud to call you a good friend.
Oh, Kate, you must come visit, but I know you will. But I'm extending the invitation to everyone in the audience too. And I wonder if we shouldn't take some questions from people in the audience.
Okay, let's see. We've got a few questions. Anyone, please feel free to drop a question in the Q&A on the bottom of your screen. If you have any question at all for either of us or both of us, we're happy to answer.
And Jenny, feel free to jump on if you want to direct us. But David's asking, what are the most receptive markets now for Turquoise Mountain? Thank you for asking. Yeah, it's such a good question. The answer is it's complicated. But by that, I mean, every craft is different and it has to be that way, right? So I work with probably 25 distinct traditions, and that's probably reducing it slightly across many different origin countries. And so what this isn't is we just set up an e-commerce platform and people buy, because the jewelry that people are going to buy from Kate in New York is really different from what's going to be bought in Tokyo or in London. And so so that's why it's complicated, but you have to be good at each of those things. And so that's why designer partnerships are so important, because I need to work with people who know their customers, and then we need to say what we can do and mush the two together. In carpets, the US and Europe is the most important. In jewelry, the US and secondarily Europe and Britain. In calligraphy and painting, the Middle East is most important. And I would say in woodwork, that is also true, that actually the 5-star hotel market and the luxury and high-end interior design is most important for woodwork and some of that more architectural work.
Just back to that David's question about that we were talking about the receptive markets. I find I'm based in the US, as I've said. Most of my customers are European right now, but I'm finding that the sustainability movement is becoming more popular. When I first started with Turquoise Mountain, it was a little bit less popular, and now it's more popular and it's coming over from Europe, as many trends do. So I'm really excited for all of America to discover these really neat products.
Yeah. And Olivier is asking about sourcing the materials. Yes, absolutely. As you said, these are from all over Afghanistan, and this is really about making sure that the value of these stones stays with Afghans and with the Afghan individuals who are making around them. There are certificates that you can get from. Essentially, you have to do it yourself. It's quite difficult, but the larger sustainability of this entire value chain is at every level. It's about the wages of those artisans. It's about their working conditions. And so that's what we verify the whole way through. I mean, that's sort of why we exist, is to make sure that we can, it's about the materials, it's about the conditions, about all of those things.
Mm-hmm. They have very good quality control. So before, when I design, I send over sketches, they're handmade over a certain period of weeks. And there's a very strong quality control in, for example, Kabul or in Jordan where I've worked. And I appreciate that because they can authenticate that there's quality. And back to one of the questions that Shoshana asked me is why work with an organization at all, and why Turquoise Mountain? And that's really why, is because the authenticity.
And David, another question about looking for new designers. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, yes, and yes, please. I think that, but what it's not is, it's not a superficial relationship. This works with Kate, and she and I spend time together and know each other. And it's true of, as I said, a handful of people. It's not a kind of, oh, we're just going to design a little thing, send the picture, they'll make it, and it's done. It's a more involved process than that. And it's that for a number of reasons, one of which is that this is about preserving the traditions, in this case of Afghanistan. This is about Kate and Saida working together so that Saida puts her mark on it as well. And Saida is a designer in her own right. You can buy her products on ishkar.com. Her bonfire collection, it's about a mentoring relationship between Kate as a designer and Saida as an emerging designer. So if designers are up for that richer relationship, that, yes, we are looking for that. And it's totally integral to what we do. Let's see. Can you answer the question about funding? Yes. So we are, we're a nonprofit. We're a British charity and an American charity. And over everything, we basically rely on both private individual support, but also, larger development aid, like government contributions in country. And so about 80% of our funding comes from those larger institutions, and about 20% from individuals. So what ends up happening is that it is those individuals that are integral to when we start things and to the things that we do that the normal larger donor institutions don't pay for, but are often most central. I mean, primary education and those kids' heritage programs are a perfect example. In Jordan, we started them because we believed it was the right thing to do, and private individuals funded them. And now, so that's an example of something that wouldn't be funded by a large institution in the beginning, but also is about starting up. But now it's worked really well with those kids. And so UNICEF has decided to fund it and allowed us to expand. So that's sort of how the funding of all this works. Let's see. The more traditional Arzu designs, really good question, Anne. So Arzu is a wonderful organization. Arzu Studio Hope, a woman named Connie Duckworth started this about the same time we did. And that weaving center that I showed you in Bamiyan was actually created by them. And that's the first thing that we've ever done that we didn't start ourselves. But Connie and I got together a few years ago and said, we should really join forces. So we've taken over the management of those 2 weaving centers in Bamiyan. Extraordinarily trained weavers. I mean, they are faster than anybody else. They're amazing. So are we going to continue some of those designs? Yes, in that you can always buy them. with any sort of set design, it's got a little bit of a shelf life that it's, you know, not great to keep in rotation forever. So you can absolutely get them right to me. But those weavers are now onto a new set of designs with different clients.
Let's see, David asked a question about, do you feel the need to comply with the growing certification frameworks here in the UK and the US, like fair trade or fair mind? I actually have strong opinions about that. So thank you for the question. I follow ethical trade, fair trade, but not with a certification. Sometimes certifications are important, like Shoshana was saying earlier in Afghanistan that they're done, but I'm not sure most people are accustomed to going into Whole Foods, for example, in the US and seeing a label that says fair trade, and you think that means trust, which it does, but there is a cost involved. You have to pay a membership to use that label. And I find that a little bit off-putting, not because I don't want to have that support, but it's because it's not about that. It's about helping the people, give the jobs. I pay what the artisans ask, within reason, of course. When Turquoise Mountain sends me the invoice from the artisans workshops, they all have their own small businesses. I trust that those prices are fair and that they're being paid well because of the oversight of Turquoise Mountain. And it's the same when I work with other organizations or other artisan facilities outside. And I just don't think it really matters, the certification. It might matter to a customer who doesn't know, but if you know, then you know.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I think that, yeah, I think a single binary stamp, which just goes good or bad. So the question and what's behind it is what matters. And it's what Kate and I both stand for, right? And equally, it's an incredibly complex question, right? And every craft type is completely different. You know, fair trade coffee has its stamp and rugs have two different stamps, but a lot of the other industries are very actually diffuse and not clear. The important thing is, usually nothing is perfect, and you got to keep marching toward better about wages, about material sourcing, everything else. And so, you know, I work in places that are difficult. I mean, I purposely work in places that are difficult. And what matters to me is that every moment we are getting, pushing deeper into making this better for the people who are making it. So I appreciate that, you know, the looking at the complexity and the reality behind it. And it's not just really just about a label, but the sentiment behind it is, you know, what we're all doing. I suppose just finally, yeah, Jenny, you're going to tell us.
No, I'm just going to chime in and say that there is a question in the chat, which
Yes.
I don't want you guys to miss, but that is, have you any thoughts of eventually going into Africa?
Yeah, well, perhaps I will give my thoughts on this and then Kate can wrap up. But as we look toward the future, yeah, so, you know, I mean, listen, there are so many places around the world. I mean, basically every place around the world has an incredible set of traditions that are unique. And I think that certainly what we were made for, but I think something that interestingly people are more looking at over this last year, when we've been so disconnected and we've seen so many you know, discontinuities and inequalities, is that we do somehow want to know about people across the world. And so there are so many places that I want to work in. I retain my fundamental answer on that, which is that what I often feel is that whenever I go into a new country, it's like having another child, because I'm probably going to be there for about 20 years and really dig into that place. I do have 2 children, so I don't say that lightly, but so yeah, there are so many places I want to work in, but we shall see. I'm going to focus on Jordan, Afghanistan, and the others at the moment. But Kate, any thoughts on the future or Africa or anything else?
I have worked in South Africa before, not the main continent, but South Africa for sure. And I did a capsule collection using a historic fence that was electroplated in gold, a symbol of freedom. I did not work with a partner. I worked directly with an artisan. And I see the difference. So, and if Turquoise Mountain goes to Africa, I will be there. But right now I had a capsule collection that was great and really neat, but I found a lot of challenges when there was not the umbrella, the oversight, and the leadership that Turquoise Mountain provides. So for now, there's nothing on the immediate forefront, but I'm so grateful that everyone has been here. We just have so much fun. Shoshana and I are terrific friends, and it's just grown over time with the shared interests and values and working together. And I'm just so
we were both teachers in New York.
We're both teachers, inner city teachers, Title I schools. But I'm also grateful for all of you who have joined tonight. It's really neat for all of you to have the interest and to spend the time learning about what we're doing, because as you can see, we're certainly really excited about it, and we want you to be excited about it too.
Thank you, everybody, so much. Kate, great to see you.
Too. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.